Didn't thank anyone, and I'd have slotted him if I'd been down there.
Anyhow, I really want to move on from touching the void now. That's really very, very interesting. After you wrote the novel The Water People, you went on to that autobiography, This Game of Ghosts, which you mentioned. And I think you say somewhere, or you told me, I think, that the surprising thing about that was quite a difficult experience because it made you think too much about climbing. And it opened this Pandora's box and a cauldron of self-doubt to write about why you're climbing.
Yeah, I hadn't really thought about it. That only really happened by the time I'd finished writing it because of what the subject was of This Game of Ghosts, which a lot of This Game of Ghosts, to me, was the paradox between doing something that you love. You know, it's not a sport, it's a passion, it's a lifestyle, really, that you find life-enhancing and life-changing, and at the same time, it's killing your friends and nearly killing you at a rate of about one a year. And I thought this paradox was never properly addressed in mountaineering writing. I was always astonished, you know, from reading books since I was about 14, how, you know, so-and-so died, and then they just carried on writing.
Yes.
There's never any sort of philosophical depth to it in terms of addressing this. And yet I thought it was so significant because even despite that attrition, climbers still climb. It said a lot about mountaineering to me. So when I started to write about it, it forced me to think about the risks we were taking and what we were doing, whereas before I just did it. Yeah. And once I started thinking like that, I couldn't get it out of my head.
And that started to shake your confidence?
Well, Peru had really quite seriously shaken my confidence. Yeah. I actually ended up climbing at a higher standard on rock and ice, after Peru. And I climbed all over the world, but I never quite climbed at the same standard again.
The incredible thing was, though, having had this absolutely monumental epic in Peru and nearly losing your life, that you go back for more. And then, amazingly, in 1991, you have almost an action replay on Pachermo. Not quite such an epic, but you end up with a broken leg again. I mean, you've had lots of falls.
Two.
I think I counted them, Joe.
Well,
I've done some falling in my climbing, and I reckon I've fallen 200 feet in my whole climbing career. And a friend I used to climb with clocked up 800 feet of airtime, as we used to call it. But Joe has clocked up a staggering 2,800, if my calculations are correct.
Yeah, but 2,000 of that was in an avalanche, so it doesn't quite qualify.
Okay, it's another 800. Okay. But would you just say you're a little bit accident-prone?
No, not really. I mean, you know, it's a difficult one, really. You know, survival-prone, maybe. You know, because maybe you can think of it the other way around. It's like glass half full, glass half empty. You know, I've got lots of friends who had one accident and they're dead.
Yeah. You
know, and you then don't qualify it and say, well, they're not accident prone. You know, what are they, death prone? You know, so you know, when we fell on Pachermo, we'd done our first ascent and we were coming down the North Ridge, and I was climbing with Mal Duff, and technically relatively easy ground, very, very windy. Now, we were both wearing the same crampons, and they were Grivell 2Fs, and Grivell had just put out a warning in all the climbing magazines saying there was a problem with this issue of crampons, this batch number.
Yes.
Unfortunately, we were climbing a mountain in Nepal at the time, so we couldn't read the magazines. And Mal's crampons collapsed, and he pulled me off, and then we fell 750 feet, and then I broke my ankle and removed most of my face, and then Mal lowered me down. Well, I wouldn't say that I was accident-prone. I'd like to say Grivell drilled these holes too big.
Okay.
I also point out that I had, you know, Grivell were quite worried that I was going to sue them. I wouldn't dream of suing them. And Andy Perkins was working for them at the time, and I wouldn't have dreamt of suing them. I mean, you're responsible for your own gear, even if Mal was using it wrongly.
Yeah, and later on, and in fact, in your last book, you say you don't want to play this game anymore. We'll come to that in a minute. But in those early days, there's definitely a sense that you were very addicted to danger. And I want to share another clip now. It is how Joe got into climbing.